Hey folks, this is Slick Sinister here, back with another episode of Tekken for Thought. I'm going to cover a topic that many players get frustrated by. I'll be talking about conditioning your opponent. Now, this will be a two-part series because I'm breaking it down for offense and defense, so let's get right to it. For offense, we're going to talk about conditioning an opponent. So let's look at the definition of conditioning before we get further into it. The definition is the process of training or accustoming a person or animal to behave in a certain way or to accept certain circumstances. So if you can condition your opponent to react to your offense, to your liking, you'll have a strong chance of victory. However, depending on the opponent, it's easier said than done. One of the most frequent complaints from players deals with their opponent pressing buttons when they have advantage on block or hit. So how do we train an opponent to respond to how you want them to? Here are some examples. So I have Negan on the stage, and we're going to look at Negan's back both punches on block and how to condition an opponent to be still. With Negan, back both punches is +4 on block. And of course it knocks down on hit, wall splats on hit, and is a counter hit launcher. Now it's an okay amount of advantage on block, but there's no guarantee that your opponent will be still if you want to go for a mix-up. They can still sidestep, backdash, or even attack, depending on your response. If we want to condition someone to take the mix-up on block, here are some options. For starters, let's look at some quick pokes. Although Negan has good long-range pokes, many of these attacks are linear outside of the homing moves, like so. But moves like his jab, down 4-1, and down 4 can cut people off from sidestepping or pressing buttons. These pokes also interrupt responses because of their startup. So let's look at the dummy for a second. A little quick forward in action here. Now that's just down 4. So when I start it, I can't even crouch jab it. Can't sidestep one direction. Can't sidestep the next direction. Similar thing with down forward 1. Let's try this. Goes forward, can't interrupt it. Goes forward again, can't sidestep it. Can't sidestep the other direction. Your opponent has to hold that if you go for that option outside of a reverse or some other mess. But for the most part, those 3 buttons make it hard for your opponent to try to get away. Now, they're not high damaging, but the purpose is you just want them to be still. Now, if you notice your opponent is button happy, you can go for some more slightly slower options because you can still use that frame advantage. So after back both punches, you can go for down 4 series. You can go for shove. You can still go for down 4-1-1. And those options you can fish for a counter hit. Now, these options that have done enough can force your opponent to wait due to being knocked down. So let's look at back both punches into shove. So we have back both punches, shove. Now most people know this is an oldie but goodie with Negan since he came out. But there's enough advantage where you can't do anything. If you do a jab, you get a bad trade with Negan. But like I said, that's linear. But if someone tries to press something outside of even a jab, that's a counter hit for Negan. Now let's look at down 4-4. So start it again, down 4-4. Now there's a trade for down 4-4, but if I do anything too slow, I get hit. However, sidestep on both sides. So when you're trying to condition, you have to be careful based on what your opponent is doing. If you want them to be still, you can use certain pokes to test the waters to see how they react to it. Now, another thing you can do, which doesn't involve you pressing anything, is to be patient. Sometimes you have to let players hang themselves. There's times where after back both punches on block, you have a certain amount of pushback, a little bit. So you can back up or just be still. And sometimes you can bait out a response from your opponent after they block that slight frame advantage. If their attacks are bad enough on block, maybe you can punish them. You can also use movement to avoid buttons and possibly whiff punish. Now keep this in mind, don't get stressed out if you lose your turn attempting to bait out a response. The whole purpose is we're trying to train somebody to freeze up. Overall, that's the purpose. Sometimes if you just block and let them throw stuff out there, you're going to keep their mind guessing. Even if they know something's coming, they don't know when. And you just need that half a second. It doesn't take long. Everything is, a lot of stuff is faster than what you expect, to make somebody just be still just for that moment. And now, the final thing to wrap up for conditioning, I want you guys to understand something. Trying to condition an opponent is always a risk. There's a chance that it will work, there's a chance that it won't work. You have some players who you won't be able to condition, whether they are oblivious to it or they just don't care. If they can't be conditioned, you have to do what works at the end of the day. Like some opponents, you might notice they're duck happy. Some opponents, they might be reversal happy. They may be, armor crush happy. Your job is to find out what's needed to win. Sometimes you can condition the people for it. Sometimes you might have to do death by 1,000 cuts. That's just the nature of the game. And with that being said, that concludes part 1 of conditioning. Stay tuned. Next week I'm going to have part 2 for conditioning. This is Slick Sinister. I appreciate you guys for checking me out.